sir.
Guys ready? Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming tonight. I'm glad it's a beautiful evening and the weather kind of changed a little bit so everybody could get out this evening, come down and talk about a police facility and ideas. A couple months ago, we had a vote, and we know the outcome of the vote wasn't in the positive, but there was a lot of positive things that came about through the vote. You know, this evening's meeting is set up by the commission to be able to talk about ideas. We want to know what you liked about the previous plan. We want to know what you didn't like. We want to know just anything that you want to talk about it. We want to be respectful of everyone. It seems like we have quite a nice crowd tonight, so time is going to be you know, something that we want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to speak this evening. We're going to try to go about an hour and a half and just get ideas. We're going to have a second meeting, what's the date? 29th, yeah. I was going to say 28th, and I thought, well, I better ask that for sure. But anyway, we would like your ideas on, you know, the topic of a police facility. One of the things that I've got to tell you is I am in total belief that the need of a facility is here. It's here today. But we want to know, you know, it was a close vote. We want to know how we can do things to make a plan better, what we should look for in the future, and where we go from here. So with that, we invite your ideas. Is there any comments from commissioners? No? Okay. Again, I want to thank you all for coming this evening. We're going to have, you know, just kind of a good old-fashioned town hall talk here, you know, just exchange of ideas. We'll all just stay as fun-loving as we can be at this point. So anyway, I would ask if when you come up, there is a sign-up sheet there. If you put your name and address, if you choose, that would help us kind of like know everybody that was here. So anyway, who would like to go first?
Is this microphone on? Yeah, it is. Well, it's certainly the topic I'm most excited about in the campaign. I'm Leslie Soden. I'm running for a city commission seat. I'm not eloquent, so I wrote my thoughts out. I thought this was a good opportunity tonight for me as a candidate to let people know what I think and what I would do differently. First of all, I want to give a big shout out to all of the first responders. Every interaction I've ever had with them has been a positive one. Ensuring that our first responders have adequate facilities to work out of is an important issue to me. I completely approve of spending money to update their current facilities, and this includes work that needs to be done on our fire stations as well. But we need to dial out to the big picture and reframe this discussion to mean, how can we achieve the best emergency services here in Lawrence? How can we actually remove the demand on our basic city services? We need to start talking about how can we prevent crime to begin with. The more we can prevent crime from occurring, the more strain we can remove from our first responders. We need to start talking about how we can refund the Burt Nash RAP program in schools, a program that helps kids who may need a little extra support at their schools. We need to look at properly funding suicide prevention programs, and we need to take a very hard look at adding back the dedicated mental health wing to our hospital here in Lawrence. I've heard the most about that, by the way. As the co-chair of the Lawrence Affordable Housing Coalition, I firmly believe we need to start looking at ways to provide housing to our citizens with the most need. Studies have shown that if we provide supportive and transitional types of housing, it will actually save us money in the long run by removing expensive demands on our criminal justice system and hospital emergency rooms. Let's be reactive and not proactive. Wait, I said that completely wrong. We need to be proactive and not reactive. I hope you will give a serious look at reframing this conversation to address our emergency needs as a whole instead of the narrow lens you are looking at it now. I know the failure of the sales tax initiative in November was a big blow to many people, but we need to see this now as an opportunity to become a leader in providing emergency citizens to all of our citizens. The opportunity exists, but will we step forward to meet that opportunity? I, for one, am ready to step up, and I look forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir.
Sorry.
My name's Vince Vanicola. Dr. Reardon, you helped raise my children. Mr. Farmer, I grew up with your dad. I don't know if you remember me.
I do.
I'm here, first of all, I want to apologize to the law enforcement officers. I went on a tour with Detective Fellers, I believe is how you pronounce his last name. He needs a new facility, no doubt in my mind. I voted no. It was a protest vote. I don't know how to get you guys' attention without voting no. I was so upset with the way Rock Chalk Park was done, I didn't know what else to do. I didn't study the proposal. I did go to his open house. I saw the small interview rooms. I saw where the witnesses and people that were charged had to be interaction. He explained a lot of things. I saw the despicable showers that were falling apart. I saw all that. I didn't know any other way to get you people's attention with what happened with Rock Chalk Park. I voted no. If you put it up for a vote again, I don't know how I'll vote, depending on who's there. I don't know what else to say. I was tired of the way you people spend money. These gentlemen I want to apologize to because they deserve better than what they have. I believe some of the money that you spent could have gone toward their facility. That's all I have to say.
Thanks, Vince.
Do you have any questions?
Question?
No, thanks, Vince.
Thanks,
Okay,
Vince.
good to see you again.
Yeah, my kids were great. Thank you.
Good.
Other comment? Yes, sir.
First off, I want to thank you all for having this meeting. I think it's a good idea to get the public involved in this. As a retired architect, I toured the West facility.
Could we have your name, sir?
Yeah, Chuck Wayner.
Okay, thank you.
I toured the West facility, and the one thing that hit me right away was they're only using half the space that's available there. So my question is, why aren't they using the rest of the space? They had a lot of talk about inefficiency of how the space was also organized, and that also could be addressed by remodeling the facility or renovations to the facility or using that extra space again. And things like they were saying there's plumbing problems. Well, that can be fixed. Also saying that the roof leaks. Well, again, that can be fixed. And also things about inefficiencies of having two different facilities. Apparently they've been at this facility since '91, so why all of a sudden is it inefficient? And I guess the one other thing I was concerned with too was paying for the land, when we have several lands available for no cost or little cost, and also paying for land we don't need. And I guess that's about all my concerns are.
Chuck, question, when you talk about the land, were you saying that we bought too much land or just we already have land in inventory that we could have used?
Well, I think I remember you having on the website, you had several sites that were no cost that the city already owned. And also, the Hallmark site, to me, buying all that land when we only needed, what, an eighth of it or half of it?
Sure, half, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also kind of irritated me that Hallmark couldn't kind of step up to the plate and do a civic duty and just sell the land you need.
Well, okay, thank you. Other comment?
Hello, my name's William McCauley. I live over in Prairie Park. Some of you know who I am, some of you don't have a clue who I am. The reason I voted no, and I live in a district that voted heavily no, has a lot to do with economic development. It has a lot to do with everything that you guys do to cater to certain groups in this community. And based on what I read in the paper and the comments in the paper, I think a great deal of citizens in our community happen to agree with me. We've got the cell tower debacle up on the hotel. You have the AstroTurf incident, the Varsity House thing. Then we've got Rock Chalk Park debacle. I can't believe how big you fumbled on that. I mean, here now we got a $25,000 fee on top of that so we can audit this whole mess. And in each one of those things I just named off, it's tied to certain people in this town. And you guys continue to cater to that group. And what's that do to the average citizen over here on the east side? And my fifth great grandfather stepped off a train here in 1883, and his name's Matthias Gantz, and he settled out here in Willow Springs. And that cemetery's full of my relatives. And my grandmother's lived over here for 96 years on the same block, okay? And you guys have nickel and dimed her to death, to where she's got to come over and ask me or my mother for money to pay her taxes, because you guys just keep raising property taxes up and doing all this stuff. At the same time, you're handing out money left and right to other people. Then we have issues like the airport economic development issue. You're running a $2 million water line and sewer line out there. You're kicking off the portable hangars on the west side and kicking those guys out. They've been there, those hangars have been there as long as I've been alive, pretty much, that I remember. And at the same time you're doing all that, you're asking the state of Kansas to give you money to develop the west side of that airport. And 7 years ago, I came and asked you to use the airport. You told me no. And in fact, you hired a lawyer just a couple months ago to keep me off of that airport. And I want to come and open a business in this town. Mr. Farmer, your advice to me when I brought issues to you was to hire a lawyer and sue the city. And that's where we're at. I have a lawyer, and you all have a lawyer, Kent S. Jackson. And despite the fact that I come to each and every one of you and bring you documents that show you statements from the FAA that your advisor lied and misrepresented what the FAA said to him, and I bring you a statement from the United States Parachute Association representative that flat out tells you your representative misrepresented and flat out lied about his statements, you guys turn the other eye and you reinstate him. And so every time we look around, you guys are doing stuff to kill small business in this community. Another thing that comes to my attention is the Delaware tribe. The same arrogance that comes out of the city hall up here. You guys tried to tell me that I couldn't make a deal with the Pines family and land my parachutes on there because you told me I wasn't allowed to use your airport. This is America. That land by the Pines is in the county. Who do you guys think you are to say I can't make a deal with somebody? This is America. How dare you go over there and talk to the Delaware tribe and try and boss them around, tell them what they can do with their land? This is America. And so that comes back to the whole point is why I said no. You just continue to give away to these other guys, and you're hurting the little people. And so that's why I voted no, because no matter what the small guy tries to do, you guys hurt us and you keep us down. And everybody I talk to in my neighborhood, I tell them vote no. And I don't mean to hurt the officers, but your priorities are all whacked out. You say the need was here today. The need was here before today. The need was here before Rock Chalk Park. And that's where you went wrong. Okay. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Other comment?
Well, I'm Austin Turney. I probably share a little bit of the previous speaker's ideas. I'll just say things a little more calmly. First, there have been some fairly arrogant comments from one of your members, he won't say who, about the 52-48 loss, like it's just an issue of, well, we need to do a little massaging of the thing and then we'll ram it through. If anything, keep in mind that your 52-48 loss came in the context of most people, if they don't know the details, will be willing to vote for a reasonable public safety thing. So I would bet and especially with, as he says, the continuing debacle of Rock Chalk Park, I would bet the vote is moving away from you. So don't think that it's just a matter of we'll just do a little massaging and we'll push the same thing through. And you might consider whether there are broader issues. I noticed the City Commission in 2012 talked about 25 or $30 million for a building in the context of adding up to 46 officers to the baseline of the police department, which would be $12 million in the first 4 years. And then once fully staffed up to the new larger baseline, another $5 million in the out years. So even in the first decade, part of which would be a build-up decade, that would be another $42 million. And how much of your big new headquarters building bakes in assumptions of the substantial expansion of the police department? And if you have a $30 million building, and then in the first decade, $42 million of property taxes, because in 2012, you said it would be multiple taxes. It would be both a bond or a sales tax to fund the building, and then property taxes to fund the expansion. It really ought to be discussed in an honest context and present why the police department expansion is necessary, not say build the building and we talked about $25 million in sales tax with a sunset, and then build the building and 2 years later staff it up and say, oopsie, did we forget to mention that it's another $5 million of property taxes? And in 2012, with different people in the commission, things seemed to be presented more honestly, and in 2014, you chose to perhaps be more deceptive. And, you know, there are a lot of other things you could talk about. It seems like a lot of the reasons about the building are very careless because, and I sense I wouldn't blame Chief Khatib because I suspect he was just told to marshal some good anecdotes, and there's not much actual data. I mean, things like the inefficiency of having, say, property storage in another location. I've done management consulting and things like that. You have to drill down to specifics. Maybe there's some inefficiency about people driving to another location, but if it turns out the inefficiency is such that you have permanently 2 people or 3 people assigned to evidence and property management, and you'll still have the same 3 people assigned in a different building, they'll maybe just have a little extra time to spend on other things, then your, quote, efficiency is more or less bullshit. And hopefully not too many of the other reasons fall in that same category. But anyways, I suspect the vote is moving away from you.
Thank you. Other comment?
Must be time to go home, huh?
That's it. Surely there's other folks that want to come.
There we go.
Is there a clock tonight?
Maybe, I don't know.
Well, I just want to make sure, don't waste my time writing my name down. Hadn't expected to go so early, but thanks for the opportunity to address some of the issues of what I took it as in the paper and Chad's articles to be interaction between the commission and the citizens to determine why this failed. Not so much about future discussions about what needs to be done, but why this thing failed. Frankly, I think it failed for a lot of the issues that have already been raised. And I think that this goes back to the previous commission, before I believe Mr. Farmer was even here, Mr. Reardon was even on the commission. I think what had happened, and I think most people saw through it, was we got rock chalk crammed down our throat. And then everybody on that commission thought, well, the next commission will take care of public safety, because who would vote against public safety? So let's just ram this down our throat with little oversight, and then we'll just pick it up on the backside. That's how I interpreted everything from this actions. And then unfortunately, the ones that are new get caught up in this. And unfortunately, if you're up for re-election, good luck. Good luck. I know at least one has already threw his hat in the ring. The other 2, I guess, are contemplating, but I wish you luck.
Rock Chalk was tried to be, what really started setting the tone for me was when we had the dog and pony show of the, I'm forgetting the name of it, that was the Boys and Girls Club. I was here for another issue, and the citizens got 3 minutes to have their grievances addressed to this commission, but the dog and pony show of the Boys and Girls Club coming in here, talking about 10 acres of land that we didn't own. We didn't own that land. There was no rights to give it away. We had no interest in it, but Mr. Farmer brought them in here so they could sit here and make it look like a feel-good story of why you should go out and vote for this. That turned me off because it's land we didn't own. We owned other land, and it was just going to be a cram down. So luckily, I think Mr. Shum had brought up the issue and said, no, we need to delink it. It had to be delinked. But Mr. Farmer had already let the cat out of the bag on that one. So a lot of things I think were done with inexperienced individuals trying to think they could sell something without really putting a lot of thought into it. To me, that was a big misstep, and that's what got me involved in this whole process. Because when we got to speak, it was, oh, Mr. Robinson, your time's up. But yet I had to sit through about a 30-minute presentation of how great the Boys and Girls Club was and why they should get 10 acres of land we didn't own. But we didn't get our chance to say anything. So that's what got me involved. Then we had the Voters Education Coalition. I believe Chief Khatib was there. One of my first comments was, when I participated, was I apologized, or I said I felt sorry for the chief. He's out there being a carpetbagger because of the folks up here. He had to go out there and put out misinformation about these facilities just to try to appease the bad decisions of this commission and the one before it. He shouldn't have to go out there and do that. And that really was I think a big mistake. Then I think it'd be quite evident, then we had the Friends of the Police Department have their little website, misinformation all over it. And that really put me off because Mr. Farmer and even our mayor are on there supporting this. There's misinformation on there, and when our elected officials don't point that out to the public, I have big issues with that. One of the things, just as a point, was, oh, well, we can't interview anybody down here at 11th and Mass. There's no communications out. There's no audio, no video. It's a lie. It's a flat-out lie. I pointed it out to the website. What do you think happened? You think they said, well, thanks for pointing that out, Mr. Robinson? No. Blip, gone. You can't comment on here anymore because they don't want the truth. They don't want the public to know the truth. And apparently this commission doesn't want the public to know the truth because the police officer here asked Chief Steve, ask him if there's the video and audio recording capabilities at 11th and Mass. And he's going to tell you, yes, there are. But yet, Mr. Mayor and Mr. Farmer, you got on and you tagged yourself to that website that says, no, there's not. Then we see, and I think a gentleman over here commented about, oh, you got to have defendants, suspects, and victims sit in the room out at the ITC. Really? The place is locked. You know, you tell me detectives can't schedule these at different times? You can't interview defendants or suspects down here at 11th and Mass and not out there? There's all kinds of ways to do that. So again, it's scare tactics. Let's scare the public and we'll get the vote. It didn't happen. It didn't work. Some of the other things was about sales tax. Mr. Farmer is supposed to support the poor. That's his big business. That's what he does. But yet he wants to put the strappings of this community, on this community of sales tax and try to sell it as, well, this gets all the people that don't live here. They come in, we're gonna get corporate, we're gonna get students, and we're gonna get visitors. Well, I pointed out, I think, in one meeting, Mr. Corliss even said in one article, totally unrelated to this, that we consider the students to be residents. But yet when you're trying to champion a tax to get people to pay, all of a sudden the students aren't residents anymore. But we can give them a fob to go out there and use our Rock Chalk Tax Park. But yet they're not citizens and residents of our community when we want them to pay for a police facility. The other thing that was also what I believe was misinformation or just omission was the graft involved or potential graft. The Friends of Lawrence Police organization had individuals that had financial interest in this. Board of directors worked for the real estate agencies. That was never disclosed by their website. Did this commission ever say when they linked themselves to that website, did they ever come out and say, oh, by the way, when we sell this, whatever the percentage rate is on the sale of that property going to go right to that real estate organization and be split up amongst the board of directors on there? Anybody mention that from our city leaders? No. The other thing that was never mentioned, this would have probably been after the vote because I didn't get the information until after the vote failed, is that the city, to my knowledge, has never acknowledged that we spent almost $40,000 of taxpayer money on land we don't own. We lost, I believe it was 10 or 20,000 in a non-refundable option contract for the Lawrence or the Hallmark property. We also spent for a, I think, 4-sided color special flame edition, almost, maybe Dave can point it out, but I think it's either $3,900 or $4,900 to get that out to every person in town. So, you know, that was money that didn't need to be spent because we couldn't just rely on the citizens to educate themselves. We got to go out there and try to sway the vote to get it to where it goes. Let's see. One of the things that, you know, it's coming down the pike, and I think it's going to hurt this, and I mean, some other people already spoke to it, was we got a jail issue coming up now. Why don't we try, what we just found out, and I thought it was very anecdotal, was when the New York Police Department recently just decided we're not going to enforce certain, what has been criminalized as just normal social behavior, that all of a sudden they just found out that, gosh, we don't arrest as many people. We don't need as many jail spots anymore. So why don't we try to revise our code so we quit arresting everybody and using our jail and our municipal court as a revenue source, as instead of what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a deterrent. And an example of that would be last year, I believe it was, when I believe it was a city attorney came in here and gave you guys a brief about why we wanted to increase our public offense code and traffic and fines and things like that. What do you think the reason that you increase fines? It's to make an ouch factor on somebody so they don't do it again. But what did our city say? Does anybody recall that? As I remember, it was never mentioned about we want to deter that behavior. It was, we're Lawrence, Kansas. We're not even in the top 5 of the most expensive court systems in this state. So we need to up our fees on our people in our town so we can pat ourselves on the back being top 5 in the state as being the most expensive court system municipality in the state. That was the reason for that. And that's kind of thinking we got to undo. You know, it's just ridiculous to think we're out there just giving all these tickets. You know, most people don't have a problem with ticket because I do this all the time when I represent people. Ticket's $50, who cares, right? But when you add on another $100 some odd in court cost, then you charge them for the luxury of staying in our local jail of $80 some a day. That's a war on the poor, gentlemen, and that's something that needs to be addressed. Let's see. Well, I'll just leave my comments at that, but I think that in the future, one of the things is, Mayor, and this kind of goes back to the recent discussions with the 9th Street corridor thing. How does this community get a seat at the table when we discuss this police department? Because what we see, from my perspective, is when we did Rock Chalk Park, for example, what I saw was, hey, we're doing this, come out and tell us what you want. And then you just did whatever you wanted. So my fear is, you're just gonna listen to what we say, make your notes, and do what you want anyway. That's the biggest fear. How do we get a seat at the table? For example, with this building design, I don't know if there's any designers in this room. I'm not, but I certainly would make an argument. We got a new workout facility out there at Rock Chalk Park. Why are we considering even adding 200 square feet at $249 a square foot construction cost plus workout equipment for a police facility? Are they not citizens of our community as well? Wouldn't we want our police to interact with our citizens when they're not at work? Why can't they use Rock Chalk like we're invited to do? Why would I want to pay, I don't know what it is, 500 square feet, 1,000 square feet? I don't know what it would be, but whatever it is, just multiply it by 249 per square foot. How do we get input into that design? Because what my fear is, you know, the elections will do whatever it's going to do. But my fear is that the citizens of this community will never get a seat at the table. They never get any input when it comes to the actual design, the actual cost structure, the location. And that's another thing I wanted to touch on. The location was horrible. That was just rammed down our throat. I heard somebody make a comment about Hallmark. I want to say something about Hallmark for a moment. Hallmark is a very good organization in this community. It's probably one of the best manufacturers we've got, and we need to take care of them. So when people badmouth Hallmark, they should stop, because they don't deserve to give this city anything. Hallmark's not the one here asking for tax rebates all the time. They're not the ones that the 1%ers in this community getting everything from the city. So we need to leave them alone. But the location, oh, and that's, I'm getting a little rambly here, but one of the things that was said as well at the Voter Education Coalition, why can't we have it out by the jail, Venture Park? Why can't we build a police facility out there? Well, the Friends of Lawrence Police said, well, it's a transmission issue. The communications are affected by a transmitter or substation out there. Well, Mr. Corliss corrected that in the paper and said that's not true. So why are we selecting land we don't own and pay exorbitant prices for just to give away? So anyway, I've kind of rambled on, but I just, we do need a facility. I'm never going to go away from that. I don't disagree with the fact that the police need something, but what that something is, this community needs to decide. Not just 5 people who get in the ears of other people, from the people that are wanting the actual contracts. Because that's what we were seeing here. We saw the realtors were going to get their cut. Then we already had a local architect firm that's already done the design, or at least been in the process of the design, so they're hoping they're going to get the contract. And that certain architect firm's associated with a certain builder in this town, so that person's expecting to build a facility. We got to get away from that. We got to get some more community involvement and somehow get a seat at the table. I wish I had the answers, but I don't. But I guess that's why you guys are the elected officials. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
So
Yes, sir.
I'm going to say right now, he's an attorney. He made some statements about graft. I want to make sure you understand that those comments are on the record
That's
tonight.
fine.
And that I take exception to any comments you made about any illegal or graft.
I didn't say anything illegal.
You said that there's graft involved at this commission level.
No, I
I
did
want to
not.
make sure that I go on
Go
record
back and listen
say,
to it. That's not what I said.
I heard what you said. I listened
Go
to
back and
every
listen to
word
it.
you said.
Go back and listen to it.
I don't need to.
Okay, well, I guess you do whatever you need to do.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Well, I probably see this from a little different perspective. My name is Jim Buddy. I've lived in Lawrence for 40 years. And I became very interested in what was going on at Rock Chalk Park, particularly the planning group that did a lot of work on areas to locate. We have 4 centers here. The closest one to West Lawrence is Holcomb, which is in the middle of the city now. It's not out toward the west. I was very impressed with the way that they did this planning, but there were opportunities that came along, and there were a lot of shifts that came along, and there was an opportunity to do something with the University of Kansas, and it was fast moving. But there's a problem with leadership that I understand. Sometimes opportunities come along and you have to go for it, and there may be some mistakes that were made. I see some mistakes that were made at Rock Chalk, and I know that you're working to change that. That's what education is all about. We make problems and we do a better job the next time. I hope you get a chance to do it the next time around. My vote for the police department was basically because I support the police, and I think we do need some things. I was a little concerned that there was not enough information there for me to make a good decision on it. But just generally, I know what's going on with crime around the country. It's always on the increase. Police officers need all the help they can get, so I was for it. The second thing I'd say was then all of a sudden the priority of the police station came along after Rock Chalk and after the library. And I'm thinking, where is the long-range plan where we have these projects out there? I know we have to jump on opportunity when it comes along and makes adjustments. And to some extent, that's what happened with Rock Chalk Park. But by the same token, I think if the voters can see all of the things that are on the plate, we read them in the paper about sewer lines and other kind of things that are coming on, they're saying, oh, I'm overwhelmed with this thing. What are the priorities for this, and how are we going to finance it? So I think a long-term plan of what we've got on the table, regardless who's here, and ideas about how they could be financed would be helpful. And then I do have to agree with some of the comments that I would like to see a little bit more meat on what was going on with the police department. I hope that's helpful.
Okay. Thanks, Jim. Yes, please. Jim.
I'd like to ask you a question, if that's okay. Are you married to Jane?
Yes.
Oh, she was my 12th grade government teacher. So tell her I said hello. But
Did you pass?
I did, yeah, barely. No, I did. Probably, yeah. So you had said that you were a little concerned there wasn't enough information to make a good decision. And I was just curious, and maybe because I was so close to it, I mean, I felt like there was a lot of information out there, but I was just curious what sorts of information you felt like was missing or?
I
what you needed
wanted,
to
like in
know?
Rock Chalk Park, we had a design of what these facilities were going to look like and what they were going to be used for, and I didn't see enough of that.
Right.
And I think there was something that came out and said, well, we just need the building, we'll figure out what to do with it. I don't know if that was exactly it, or that was the impression that I had.
Sure.
But I just like to see a little more meat on it was all.
Okay, thank you.
Jim, do you mind if I just ask a question? I think you bring up some important points, but I'm also interested in that. Were you aware that there were groups that could go out in buses and things like that?
Oh, yes.
That could visit that? Did you have an opportunity to do that? And
No,
do you think that was helpful?
I didn't, but
Okay.
was familiar. It wasn't so much the need, I accepted that.
Okay.
It's what are we gonna have?
Okay,
What's the vision? What's this great thing gonna look like? How's it gonna help reduce the crime? How's it gonna help make better policemen? That's what I was looking for.
okay.
I have no doubt that it's needed.
So if we had a situation like this, a gathering like this, where we had one in this very room about Rock Chalk Park with information with it, would that be what you were looking for or
Yes.
something else?
Yeah.
Okay.
And also, that group that was out there that did the planning, a lot of parents and so forth, I think they did a tremendous job because they had children that didn't have facilities that are around overcrowded situations. There were people that looked to the future about how you could make money on the various kinds of services that could be provided. And I don't know where we get the information about what the police departments need. I think from a citizen's perspective, they can tell you what they don't like and what they do like about the police department. But when it comes to what the design of it ought to be, it ought to come from the policemen. And it ought to come from the experts in that field. That's the ones that I would be looking to. And that's the information that I would like to have. It would be easier for me. But I still have a problem. If that's the next in the priority list, are there things on down the road in that priority list that are as important as the police department that is going to say, oh, now we need this. And I think if we had a bigger picture of it, that would help. The other thing I guess I would say is that I've also been aware of mental health issues. And there's no doubt about it, all around the country, we see overcrowding in jails because of mental health issues. And I think that is a piece that has to be built into the equation. We can't ask our police to deal with mental illness when they've got another kind of a job. They can help diagnose it, but they can't help treat it. That's not their profession. So I think if we look at it that way, we may have another thought. Now, I did go back and I looked into the law in 1994 about what the funds were supposed to be used for in that 1% sales tax increase. And it was to be used for a West Lawrence Recreation Center that has never been built till today, by the way. For the jail, Bert Nash got some of the money and visiting nurses got some of that money. And that has a no sunset law, so it keeps reoccurring and generating some funds that I would hope might be able to help with this. But I have no knowledge of the big picture on that. But I do think that mental health is a major issue here.
Jim, when you talk about long-range planning, and I've heard a lot about that since the vote, was that we need to do a better job of long-range planning. Do you think that that's something that not only from the city side, but a combination of the city, the county, the school district, so that, a taxpayer knows more of what the really big picture is going to look like over time?
It's kind of an interdisciplinary approach to solving problems. That's a good way to go.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay.
I'm the other Austin attorney, the senior one, and I just want to emphasize a couple of points that have been made because they're the ones that have been the most important to me. And the biggest one is to have a plan that projects reasonably the future. From the very moment that the Rock Chalk Park proposal and the police proposal came up, there was in the back of my mind, oh, we've got to build a big sewer plant out south, and we've got to connect to it, and there's going to be quite a bit of investment there. And yet I have never seen a projection that would project both the expected investments over a period of time, new capital equipment, and the operating costs, because we also are seeing that we have things like water lines that are old, and there seems to, from my perspective, there's an increasing need to do repairs in our water and sewer system. And so this would be part of a whole picture. And I agree with your comment, Mike, that wrapping that in so that the citizen has some sense of what the county's going to be asking for in the school district would really be a big advance. The other point I would like to just comment on a little bit is in the planning. Some of you know I spent 8 years on the school board, and whenever we were planning to build or add to a school, we would have what we would call charrettes, where any parent or citizen could come in and they would hear the options for design and have the opportunity to comment on it. And I think that had a great deal to do with our building support for bond issues, because people felt, okay, we're invited in, we can express our opinions, and we'll hear the reasons why a choice is made. So that, I think, is a good thing to keep in mind also.
Questions, Mr. Tuerney? Any questions? Okay. Austin, thank you very much.
You're entirely welcome.
Other comments? Jim?
I'm sitting here, and it just occurred to me that probably I didn't say something that I should have said. I don't know to what extent the Lawrence citizens have been involved in the planning of the police department, but it seemed like this is a very good start. And I saw it again with Rock Chalk, with all the families that were involved with that planning process, with the questions and answers that were provided. Provided some good input. It also provided a lot of strength to bring people back together. So maybe we need to hear from citizens and to change some ideas and have some innovative ideas what's going on. I heard some stuff about, well, why do they need a fitness center? Well, I guess you need a fitness center because you need cops that can take down the bad guys. And there's some reasons for all those kinds of things. And I think we need that kind of exchange. So anyway.
Thanks, Jim. Okay, other comment?
Hi. So I think even bringing this up.
Can we have your name, please?
My name's Erica. Even bringing this up
Last
after the
name, please.
city of Lawrence.
Can we have your last name, please?
Shearer, Shearer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The city of Lawrence voters spoke fairly clearly on November 4th. So bringing this up again is actually kind of a slap in the face. Period. As other people have pointed out, there are far more important things for the city of Lawrence to be spending money on. Obviously, infrastructure like sewer, pipes, roads, you name it, the city of Lawrence probably needs improvement on it, especially as you get further east into town. Also, if you're talking about crime, you need to start addressing that at its entry level, which is funding social services. So if you're going to start, increasing taxes in order to pay for something that's supposed to stem crime, you need to be doing that by funding after-school programs for children, giving funding to sexual assault awareness groups, funding healthcare. We're talking about how mental health services seem to have been outsourced to people with guns, which is the stupidest idea in the world. Bert Nash is suffering a lot under the funding cuts, as are places across the state. And they're certainly not alone. If you want to put funding anywhere to improve that, it's not in a third police facility in a small bedroom community. Anyone who's lived here for more than 6 months knows you get pulled over by one cop, suddenly there's 3 there. We're already over-policed. We do not need a larger police presence. A regressive sales tax is definitely the worst idea for funding this. If you're going to go ahead and push it through, even though the people who, basically, politically speaking, are your bosses, have already given you a flat-out no. Anyway, I don't really know if there's any point to even speaking, since, my vote and my collective vote with other people who said no to you should make it quite clear what the city of Lawrence wants. So, is there any point in speaking at all?
Absolutely. Absolutely there is. Other comment?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Ted Boyle, President of North Lawrence Improvement Association. And I was on the committee for Friends of the Lawrence Police Department. And this rhetoric that I've been hearing is, a lot of it's been untrue. And when they started this project, first thing I said was the problem's going to be Rock Chalk Park. That's going to be the problem. People were upset about that because they didn't get involvement in it. Now, that being said, some of the people, think that they wanted to show their power by not voting for it, even though they believed that we needed it. And we needed it, and we needed to plan for it at least 30, 40 years in the future. And I believe that's what we did. And also information that was supplied to the public. I know the Friends of the Lawrence Police Department had different meetings all around town. And you know what? The same people that are complaining about not having that information, I didn't see their faces there at that meeting. So how can you educate somebody on something if they don't show up for the meetings? And there were several of them, and the flyers and all of that. So I really don't want to hear that, because that's an excuse. The other deal is, back to Rock Chalk Park, it's something that the public was resentful about it. I didn't like it. I didn't like it, my family didn't like it, my neighborhood didn't like it. But that doesn't mean I'm going to shoot myself in the foot and make my neighborhood less safe for the residents. So I believe that we need that police station. And you got to figure this, when that project first started, there might have been somewhere around 28, 30% of the people that were for it, and 70% against it. Well, then time voting rolled around, it was 48-52, 4%. So I believe that the Friends of the Lawrence Police Department did educate some of the public, and they paid attention to it. So now we're back to ground zero. How are we going to fund this? And I believe the 0.2% of the sales tax increase for 7 years, 8 years was a very small amount for everybody to pay, especially when visitors come to town for football games, baseball, basketball, downtown. We're going to pick up 30% of it. And I don't think the public could have got a better deal any other way. And when I first came up here for this problem, I told you all that a property tax increase was something we did not want to see on the table, because then it always falls back on the property owner to fund things. And people think that if it goes on the property owner, that the people that own property, it's not going to cost them something. Well, if your property taxes are increased, your rent's going to go up, your groceries are going to go up, your services are going to go up to cover that property tax forever, not 7 or 8 years like the sales tax was. So we got to take a look at this and get this funded and get it done, because it definitely needs to happen. Thank you.
Thanks, Ted. Other comments?
Good evening. Jeremy Roth Kushel is my name, North Lawrence. And my perception is that there's three main reasons why this proposal was rejected. They're not necessarily, I'm going to put them in the order that I perceive them from the general citizenry. It's not necessarily my order, but I think first is this growing suspicion of, if you don't want to call it graft, I mean, because that is, that does have, elements of.
Libelous,
But
serious. It's a serious statement.
Yes. Okay. I mean, but the thing is this is related. Like back when the Rock Chalk Park deal was being wrapped up, I made the statement that the city commission had gotten the city involved in a nepotistic deal. And it was misconstrued that I was saying that city commissioners personally were having, benefiting their family or that type of thing. I hadn't said that. I'd said very specifically that the contractor selected had familial relations with the endowment at KU and other such things, and that the city commission had fiducially decided to get in bed with that. And so I think that's part of the perception, is that there's this, you could call it metagraft or subgraft. It's not, I don't think anyone's directly accusing anyone on the city commission of personally benefiting from that deal or this proposed deal, but there's the sense that there's an operating procedure in the city of Lawrence that does not put the citizenry as a whole front and center. It puts a small network of private citizens who, some of them contribute a lot to the city, but it puts their interests sort of ahead of what's best for all of us. So that's, I think, is probably a large part of why this was rejected. It felt a little bit fast. It felt like there was a conjoining of the question of whether consolidating police facilities was an effective way to proceed with police activities, with the question of whether the police need more office space or very specific space for things that they don't have space for right now. And those things were conjoined and then pushed together with this question of location. And I think it was a little bit too little input from the people. I like this idea of a charrette. You actually can, forget crowdsourcing, citizen source a lot of the ideas. The more and more of that type of stuff that Lawrence does, the better we're going to look moving into the future. So that's the first thing. Second thing, I think, is that there's a sense that Lawrence benefits a lot from having a police department that historically has had pretty good relationships with a large part of the citizenry. I'm sure there's people who would, reject that in terms of their personal interactions, but I think in large part, I don't think that there's ever been a citizen killed by the police here. I think that's a really good thing, and I think we should count ourselves lucky for having a police department that has restraint in that manner. So there's a sense that maybe we want to take it more in the direction of community policing, of community relations, of distributing police facilities throughout the community, so there's a sense that your neighborhood policeman or woman. And so I think those questions should be separated. The question of efficiency, effectiveness of consolidating space, which is an interesting and important question, with the important question of community police relations. And whether even, because when money questions are brought up, it becomes the chance for the citizens to feel like we have a sense of actually asserting our authority both over our public leaders and servants, and also our police leaders. And so a sense of that maybe this is the time to incorporate citizen oversight of some sort in relationship to the police. That can only benefit the community, closer relationships, personal relationships, that type of thing. And then thirdly, I think maybe I'm in the minority in terms of this concern. I do think nationally this is maybe much more worrying than specifically to Lawrence, but the question that came up a couple years ago, I think, of accepting a Homeland Security grant for a camera downtown, the acceptance of, I think it's an MRAP vehicle that has the optics of a military vehicle. Not that police don't need a way to protect themselves if they're involved in a high danger shootout scenario. I don't think anyone could deny that. But there's a sense nationally, and it's very obvious with these Pentagon programs, of military equipment being put down into the community. And it's not just the equipment. It's the police in America have gone from the blue to the black uniform. So there's a sense that we locally have a responsibility to arrest this movement towards a division between the police and the citizens and a conflict there, and bring the police back into the fold of the citizenry, that we're not antagonists, you know, and so I think that is also on some people's minds, of that we want to take this opportunity to assert that Lawrence is a community, has a community-based police, not a militaristic-based police. And those questions need to be addressed about what kind of equipment Lawrence Police Department is willing to accept, whether there's restrictions in terms of what kind of equipment can be accepted, and what is our mode of operations. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments?
Hi, I'm Rob Sands. I live in West Lawrence. I want to thank everyone who's spoken so far. There's been a lot of really good points brought up. Along with what you, sir, said, I believe is we should have probably had this sooner than after the vote already happened. But regardless of that, I want to echo some of the points I heard and expand on some. Sir, you mentioned working with integrating interagency partners and doing shared use facilities. I think that's something that needs to be really seriously looked at. Whether you do a combined facility with the fire department or another public service entity or another city entity or another county entity, et cetera, et cetera. If the site selection works out, if the facilities work out, if the funding works out, I think we could all see a lot of cost savings if we looked toward interagency partners. Was it part of the CIP? I've looked through Horizon 2020. I've taken a look at the capital improvement plan. I've seen a lot of things in there, a lot of things, frankly, that take, for example, 6 and Iowa Street took 2 years to plan that interchange. Where was this in the capital improvement plan? Where was this on the 2-year planning cycle? I think it probably should have been on there. One of the reasons that voters, I think, were opposed to this is that Lawrence Police Department, I assume through the permission of the commission, really took a lead role in seeking out Wilson Trainer's estimate of what their facility needs are. I understand that Wilson Trainer, and I don't recall the other company that did that estimate, but they're doing it on best practices, and probably the amount would not have changed, the square footage would not have changed, but when it's packaged as this is from the Lawrence Police Department instead of this is from the Lawrence City Commission, I think a lot of people may have had problems with that. The Wilson Trainer estimate, it's quoted a little bit high, I think 6% in some areas, especially on the planning, the architectural costs. There were some options, building options in there that probably could have been scaled back a little bit. Instead of a brick facade or a stone facade, you could have taken that back a little bit, still have attractive options to make it look like part of the community, but not cinder block, you know, like a bunker style. So I think with the price tag on there of that, where were the cost savings within that estimate that maybe that price tag could have dropped down a little bit. And then my key point with all this is what are the taxing or funding options that improve police operations? The facility alone is going to do a lot of things, but is it going to do the right things? are we going to be able to spend the money and get the right response times, the right calls for service that we want from the police force? I'm a big believer that that humans are terrible at prediction. We cannot see the future, we never will. But one thing I do know is that with every action, there's an unintended consequence. And so I think with this, the unintended consequence was, well, a lot of people in this room, I would think, agree that we need a police facility. The unintended consequence of some other projects that were brought up is now we don't have one. And so we have to go back to the drawing board and figure out how to fund it. I believe it should be probably added to the capital improvement plan. Give the police funding in areas that improve training or response times or calls for service, that kind of thing. And then probably put this on a bond issue instead of maybe a sales tax. Sign and thank you for everybody.
Thank you.
The opportunity.
I'm sorry, the last statement you said put it on what?
Bond it instead of put it as a,
So property tax.
Yeah.
You're advocating for an increase in property tax to pay for the police station.
well,
CIP. that's
not
the way
this
we do
year.
it.
Not this year. The debt, the amount of debt that we have in the city, it's not at 30%. It's not the 30% of the assessed value, but it's going down in the coming years. And so looking at putting it on a future bond issue, not one immediately. I don't think immediately. No.
So you're
Not
asking
bonded,
us, so you're asking us to rank this as one of the priorities in the 5-year capital improvement plan, correct? And probably in which year? How far out? Do you have any idea?
Well, the capital improvement plan is always what, 5 to 10 years?
5, generally?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably have
It
to
has
be up
to
there.
have a funding source.
And it's got to have a funding source, and, you know, if your suggestion is a raise in property tax, I mean, we can obviously consider that. I mean, one of the things that we wanted to make sure that, at least my belief, and I'm only saying my belief, is that when I supported the 0.2% sales tax, that I thought for sure that it was the most reasonable and quickest way to pay for the facility and take care of the debt. And I truly, I still believe that. I think property taxes, you know, we can talk about, you know, only people who own property pay for it, but I can guarantee you that every time that somebody who rents a piece of property and saying, you know, a landlord gets an increase, I know that they're passing those things through. So
yeah.
it's just part of the business. So, you know, we need to be very careful about what that cost is going to be, so, and how it's to be paid for. So I think that the belief that we had is that it was the most reasonable way to pay for it. So anyway, that's our belief, but I appreciate the
Yeah, I appreciate
comments
it.
about planning for the future.
Thanks.
Rob, do you mind if I ask you just one question? Because
sir.
we really are trying to get thoughts from the citizens on what's best, not just what went wrong, but what's best to do in this case. Were you aware that there was a whole time spent by the city commission reducing the price by decreasing the size and things like that? And I asked that just because I need to know that.
The only source document I was able to find, and I did quite a bit of study on this 2 years ago when the issue first came up, was the Wilson Trainer Architects, their packaging of the deal. I know that yes, I do recall the news reports of reducing the size of the facility. If you're asking me where I think the size should be reduced, I'm not sure.
No, I was just wondering if you were aware that there was a fair amount of
Yes.
time spent to
Yeah,
reduce that.
and I remember Mayor Amix talking about making the facility smaller.
Let me ask one other question. The information that you got about this, where did you get it from? Did you get it from reading the newspaper? Did you get it from going to the website of the city? I just want to understand how you did your research.
The initial documents that I got on the Wilson Trainer and the statement of need were from the police force website.
Okay?
And then the statements by the mayor were obviously from the newspaper.
Okay. Would you say a majority of the information you had was from the newspaper?
No.
Did you ever go to the website of the city or read anything there that was available?
No, I got everything from the LPD website, the statement of need,
Okay,
and and their Wilson Trainer Architects estimate.
Very good, thank you.
Other comments? Anyone else? Nope.
Since information sources have Austin attorney again, since information sources have been mentioned more than once, I just observed that a great deal of the information was almost wholly anecdotal. Something in the newspaper about, the detective has to parade a rape victim by the defendant or something. And, that A is probably more or less an urban legend, and B, if the detective is so incompetent that he does that, putting him in a new building isn't going to make him competent. And almost all the stuff was very much anecdotal. The one notable sort of actual factual data that came out was the information from that Johnson County organization comparing 30 Midwestern cities, which had some really interesting information, which was immediately downplayed because you were in the middle of a sales campaign. Because the information about the very low crime clearance rates should have been shocking, and it should have disturbed you in your role as overseers and representing the citizens of Lawrence. But instead, it was just like, yeah, whatever, we've got to sell the sales tax issue. But most of the information was just heavily anecdotal, that there'd be savings from efficiencies. Well, anything specific? And like I say, if you really want to talk about efficiencies, usually you have to look at specific times and staffing issues. And a lot of times in organizations, you can make some changes and, you can change the work so that it takes, say, 2.7 full-time equivalents to 2.4, but you still staff 3 anyways to cover vacation gaps. So there wouldn't be any actual change. And it may be wrong, but I get the sense that the reason Chief Khatib had so little sort of specific ammunition and just had to rely on just loose anecdotes was because you didn't demand much from him. You more or less just said, hey, we agree and we want to build a big building.
Thank you.
We don't need much details.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is Michael Lundeen. I live on the west side of town, just off of Drum Drive. I voted against this because I wasn't convinced that it was the best option. And I say that because I found it very difficult to separate what was needed from what was wanted. I read various things, training range, underground parking. I don't know how much of what was in the final proposal, but I just found myself wondering, this is a $28 million option, what's the $10 million option? Would the police turn down $10 million if we offered it to them? I think they wouldn't. So if they had that, what would they do? If they had $20 million, what would they do? Why aren't those options the selected options? Why is this one the right one? And so I just needed to know what the needs were and get rid of the wants. And maybe there are a few wants that we could afford, but it just wasn't broken down very well. So that's all.
Michael, did you need to see specific plans of what we would have gotten once we established wants versus needs? What specific plans would have looked like at different dollar amounts?
I would have liked to have seen at least broad strokes along those lines. I don't need every last I-beam, itemized, but an idea of what various components would cost. I never saw, I didn't look very hard, but I never saw anything to that effect published in the Journal World or on the city's website. So, yes.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate that. Other comments?
I'm Paul Carter. I've lived in Lawrence a long time. I was born and raised on the east side of town. I now live on the west side of town. I think in most respects, I'm like most Lawrence residents. I want a wonderful community with a lot of amenities. I want a community that's safe, that provides great opportunities for kids, the elderly, etc. And for the most part, that's exactly what we've got. And we've got that because of the remarkable efforts of the leadership of the city, you and your predecessors, of the police force, Chief Khatib and his predecessors, and the other city employees. I think I'm very much like most Lawrence residents in that not only do we want this, but we're willing to pay for it. And the record's pretty strong on that count, that Lawrencians pay for things of value. They make investments in the community. I'm very different from most Lawrencians in one critical respect, which is that I vote. And I take my vote very seriously. And we voters, we get really two things to weigh in on when things are presented to us. The most important thing we get to weigh in on is who sits in your chairs, because it's you that we're really relying on to ensure that the city that we all want to have here continues, and the aspirations we have for the community are realized. We also get the opportunity sometimes to weigh in on very specific decisions like we did this last time. And so I voted no on this. And the overarching reason I voted no was because in this particular instance, I lacked confidence that the correct decision was being presented to the voters. I think there are three basic things that were on my mind, most of which have been alluded to one way or another, that I'll just offer to you. But ultimately, the real issue was that these three things combined to erode my confidence that the right option was being presented to us. The first thing, which is actually the least significant in this particular instance, but probably the most significant for all of you and whoever follows you moving forward, is the question of the long-term plan. A lot of speakers have addressed this. Some things, as one speaker in particular highlighted very effectively, I think some things you can't plan for, some things you can plan for. Police needs you can plan for, and you should. I think so that this came up in a context which just was surprising to people, and from the get-go didn't make sense. People asking, like, why are we presenting this when, last year, last month, last week, this didn't seem to be an issue. But again, for me, specifically with respect to this vote, that was not the least significant, or that was the least significant. The most significant issue had to do with planning around this specific proposal. We were presented essentially with a one plan, no options, one plan with one price tag. As Commissioner Reardon emphasized, there was a price reduction to that with one modification, but still it was a take it or leave it. Here's the deal, it costs $18 million. I am a planner by profession, which means that I'm accustomed to looking at essentially every option and undertaking thorough assessment of what the options and trade-offs are, so that I, on behalf of the people I serve, can reach the right decision and recommendation. And from that standpoint, this plan never had, it never had credibility for me. In large part, I suppose that's because of the way it was presented and defended. But let's just say that as this played out, it just seemed to me that there were a lot of other options that were not considered. As the last speaker highlighted, and this comes down to price too, and so it's $18 million is what it takes to fix these problems. A lot of people have weighed in on limitations of that approach. There was a letter to the editor at one point from an architect who just like bing, 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 bing. They talk about the roof. Well, the roof could do da-da-da-da-da. I don't know if he was right or not. But that certainly suggests, again, that there was a lack of diligence in this plan. Another thing that just became sort of conventional wisdom as this plan was sold was we want one site, not two sites. Well, okay, that's very interesting because a lot of cities are moving to two sites. The city growth as we all know, has been just extremely to the west. We have facilities out there. In fact, we're sitting on several thousand unfinished square feet. It was never clear to me why, when the argument was we don't have any space, why 14,000 or whatever it is, unfinished square feet is not relevant to a solution. So the plan as presented never suggested to me that all of the appropriate options had been considered in the context of a community that is trying to do a lot of different things and has limited income. The final factor, which was also very significant, was what I would say is the unseemly engagement of the police force itself in selling this proposal led by Chief Khatib. And I think, as again one of the last speakers highlighted, this became particularly just odd in the context of articles that suggested that the underlying performance of the police force itself had problems. Another aspect of it that personally I found very bizarre was that the argument that was being presented by the police department all too often, as the last speaker highlighted, became these anecdotes. Well, I think we can accept that it's unacceptable for us as a community to have computers that get rained on because of leaky roofs, or some of the other specific things that were highlighted. However, those anecdotes don't go to the fundamental solution, because the solution we were being provided was one site for $18 million. And again, it's uncredible. It's not credible to me. I don't think it was credible to most voters that somehow or another there weren't less expensive solutions that had to be examined, that again, with very concerted effort to find the intersection between what the community really, really needs in order to be the kind of community we want it to be and to have the kind of police force we want, and for the most part have. The intersection between all that and what we as a community can afford, because there are other things we also want: recreational facilities, jails, et cetera, and limited means to do them. So that's why I, in the end, felt that I could not support this proposal. Moving forward, I would just suggest that I think that my critiques, as well as the other critiques here, suggest a very clear path forward. For me, the first and most important thing is a compelling proposal that actually fits, that matches the problems to the solution in a way that seems as if we've examined options, we've made that balance between what's affordable and what really does address what is wrong, and that I would have confidence that if that is presented to the voters of Lawrence, that those of us who do show up actually will make the right judgment, like we historically have, and support what is clearly a compelling need for this community, which is to address the problems that were highlighted in this process. The other thing I would say in closing is that I think to the broader issue of confidence, that options being presented to us have been effectively examined and configured and so forth. I think that's a remaining problem. That is the problem, as many people have highlighted, that is characteristic of Rock Chalk Park and some of these other things. And so I would just hope that you, our most important 5 elected representatives, really take very seriously the challenge of getting in front of these problems and doing what only you can really do to build confidence on the part of the voters of Lawrence that the options that are being presented to us, in fact, have undergone the kind of scrutiny and examination that they should, so that we can reach solutions that are good for all of us and affordable for those of us who have the long-term interests of this community at heart.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Any other comments? We have about, 10, 12 minutes left in this session before we do the one here in a couple of weeks. So is there anyone else that wishes to speak to this evening? Okay. Well, we appreciate you all coming out this evening, but one of the things that I do want to say on behalf of the commission, I had the good fortune of working with these 4 gentlemen the last couple of years. And I want you to know that these guys put their heart and soul into this job. And we get a lot of beaten every once in a while, and probably sometimes we deserve it. Sometimes I don't think that we quite do, but that's okay. It goes along with the job. But these folks are all stand-up people, and they do a tremendous job for this community. And sometimes, like I say, you know, we'll question what we do. And, but that's okay. You know, I was intrigued by one of the comments earlier, and that is, how does the public get a seat at the table? Well, folks, the chair's been pulled out for us, and we're inviting everybody to the table. We're here to get your ideas, your comments, and that's what this is about. We're trying to make Lawrence a better community. You know, there was a lot of work done by Chief Khatib and his officers during the recent election in trying to get the information out that was correct, and I believe that he did a tremendous job in making sure that all the information was made available. The Police Foundation, a group of citizens that got together and tried to help get that word out too. I mean, we can't say enough thank you for all the work that they've done. You know, and you know, the comments that I've made and other commissioners have made, I want you to all know that they come from the heart. I mean, it really is. These are important things, and they're important decisions. And you know, we will continue to try to make it right. We will try to earn the respect of citizens of this community, in making sure that as we go forward, we have the right plans in front of everybody to be able to see. There's a lot of good comments, from long-term planning to making sure that we have the right fit. So anyway, I appreciate all the comments this evening, and we look forward to seeing you and other citizens in a couple of weeks. Thank you all very much.
This will be, Dave, this will be posted, right, online? We've recorded tonight.
Been recording it, and we'll have it online, and the next meeting is on January the 29th, which is Thursday at the Arts Center.
Right. Gentlemen, any comments?
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.